Welcome to Still Plays. This is the talk video where we cover any recent news in Galaxy of Heroes and cover any major changes in my roster as I prepare for Grand Arena. This week we are covering these topics. The final Galactic Legend requirements have been announced. Grand Arena Season 11 has been announced with its theme and feats. We'll cover those. The login character has been announced for the month of October. And then we have reached my 100th Zeta. So we're going to cover my Zeta history, look at some finalists for my 100th Zeta, and then at the end of the video put on that 100th Zeta. Yesterday we got a title update that gave us the final requirements for Galactic Legend Luke Skywalker and the Sith Eternal Emperor. For the most part, they're fairly good. We'll take a look at that, but in addition to that, Mon Mothma became farmable, and we'll touch upon this more with the Grand Arena portion, but there will now be 2 fleets required for Divisions 1 and 2. Obviously, as a free-to-play player, I'm not going to be pursuing any of these Galactic Legends in the near future, but to give you an idea of how friendly these requirements for both of these characters are. So here is where my Luke stands. I did get Jedi Knight Luke, but because of how redundant some of these requirements are, I'm in pretty good standing, and then most of these characters are really good with Mon Mothma and 3 Baka, 2 characters I want to get up to Relic quickly, and then the others having some pretty good use. Really, it's just Biggs and Wedge that I don't like. Lando, I don't like, but I've already got him, so whatever. Leia is the type of character I like to bring to Relics. I'm not sure how she is, if the damage scales enough, but with that kind of multi-attack, I can see that being useful. And there isn't a good Leia in the game. She's a candidate for a rework. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point she became a lot better. But when you compare that then to Kylo, who I have in the background been making some progression towards just taking characters up to gear 11. Like, I'm not even close on Kylo. Take a look at Rey. Not even close on Rey. And then the Sith Emperor. Even with the Sith Emperor, I'm already starting off in a better position than I am with Kylo and Rey. So, all in all, these are pretty decent requirements that I'm happy with, and I assume that at some point I will go after one of these characters. I'm going to wait to see until the kits are released which one is going to be better. Wait until the Whales and Krakens figure out which of these characters is going to be better overall within the game. That's when I'll make the decision of who I'm going to pursue. But because of the depth we now have at Galactic Legends, I think that the penalty that you incur for going after one of these characters is smaller than it used to be. Now, the last thing I want to say about Galactic Legends is if you are going after one of these, I would bet a ton that they are going to be released next week. Admiral Piazz will be released at the beginning of next week or at the end of this week, but it's going to happen at the end of this quarter, which is next week, is the end of September. That's when it happened with the first round of Galactic Legend characters. With the first round of Galactic Legend characters being released at the end of March of this year, was right at the end of the first quarter. They're going to want to juice their numbers as much as possible. There is no reason for them to shorten the timeline for the release of Mothma and Piet unless it was to squeeze these Galactic Legend characters in by the end of the month. So expect next week that these characters will be put into the game. For me, that really means I'm going to be farming Piet as soon as he becomes available. And if you're close on any farms, try and wrap them up, because Mon Mothma 3 Baka, Piet. They're all characters that you're going to want to have in your rosters as soon as possible. As we touched on a moment ago, there are now 2 ships on defense for Divisions 1 and Divisions 2. So for me, that's going to be either the Malevolence or Negotiator. I'm going to make that call based on looking at my opponent's Grand Arena history. And then I will save the other one for offense. Most people are going to have patterns, or they're only going to have one of the 2 ships available. So I will be putting the I'll be keeping the counter to whatever they use on defense. The second option is going to be a lot harder. I'm thinking really the best defense is going to be putting down Akbar. I've got the Y-Wing. I just finished it up today. But I think because my other offensive ships aren't as good, I might want to be keeping Akbar for offense until I build up my First Order pilots or my Sith pilots. Really, the First Order pilots, the Finalizer is more of an offensive ship. The Radis, without the Houndstooth, is kind of a mess. So I really don't want to be setting that on defense. So it's really going to come down to, do I put Akbar on defense, or am I going to be putting down maybe Thrawn or Tarkin with Sith and Empire ships? Now, before heading into the Grand Arena, I like to just take a mental note of the feats, because I go for them in my mind. I mean, if you're free to play player, going for feats basically just means you have more wiggle room for how many losses you can get. The more feats you are able to complete, that just you can afford to lose 1 or 2 more of your matchups. So it's Night Sister themed. There's a number of times Savage is in here. What sucks is the Night Sisters are one of the best defensive teams, so having to take them off defense to fulfill these offensive feats is going to be a bit of a nuisance, but really they're not too bad. The only thing to be mindful of are these top 2 here with the tenacity down and the crit chance up. I think it helps to know ahead of time which characters you want to be using for those. In this case, it's pretty straightforward. The crit chance up, you're going to have a ton of options. Karga, the Leadership Zeta on Grandmaster Yoda, here's your chance to use it. The combo of putting crit chance up from Bastila onto Yoda and then Yoda spreading it with Battle Meditation. Stark gives it to Troopers. Han Solo will give it to anybody on your team. You can use Jawa Engineer. Jedi Knight Anakin gives it to everyone. Shakti gives it to attackers. Tenacity down is a little bit more difficult with just limited options, but Dengar gives it to everyone. HK-47 is an AoE. Jawa Scavenger is an AoE. And Chewbacca does it on his basic, but usually with the basic ones, like plenty of characters do crit chance up on a special or a basic, but I'm only looking at the AoEs. But Chewbacca, because he's assisting so much, that functionally makes sure that the tenacity down is going to be applying frequently up for him to be a usable option for that feat. The login character is Royal Guard. For this past month, it was IG-88. Most of the community was hoping that meant something about the Mandalorian. I'm still holding out hope that we get something Mandalorian related before the end of the month. I really hope it wasn't signifying like with August there was Stormtrooper Han, I believe, possibly referencing the Death Star Galactic Challenge. IG-88, I guess if you really want to stretch things, was referencing the Bounty Hunter Galactic Challenge that we had a week ago. But other than that, there's no signifier with that login character unless it's going to happen in the next few days. Royal Guard, maybe a rework, maybe something related to the ship. I don't think it's related to the Galactic Legend characters, even though he's required, because, again, I think the Galactic Legends are coming out next week before the end of the month. Here is my Zeta history. So what you see here, this first 4, this is 2017. This next group here of 20 is the Zetas I applied in 2018. This next group here that has a gray tone to it that goes from Jolie to Geo Brood. Those are the 2019 Zetas. And then here over, those are the 2020 Zetas so far. What some of the lessons that I've learned, like I don't have a lot of Zetas that I regret because I've been pretty careful about which ones I put on, and I usually do a lot of research. The Zeta I say I regret most is Jyn Erso Lead. I put it on for light side Hoth territory battles, trying when my guild at the time was going for all the stars. I only attempted it one time before switching guilds to pursue light side Geonosis territory battles. So it's never really been used for me. So that's probably the one I regret most. All the other ones, their usefulness has kind of expired for me, but they were useful at the time. Like a lot of these during the Palp meta over here. The Darth Nihilus unique, the Palpatine unique, even the Vader unique, like those are marginal Zetas, but they helped me get a lot of crystals and squad arena at the time and helped me break into the top 100 for the first time as a player. So I can't really regret those when they did pay dividends for me at the time. This one here that's listed for HK47, that's the Lead Zeta that we got rewarded back, so I applied that to HK47 since at the time that was around Darth Revan. When I broke this down, I had 24 leadership Zetas, which you can see I kind of pursued all at once for the most part. Just really trying to get all those Zetas that made the biggest difference for an entire squad or an entire faction. 11 of those Zetas are specials, the rest are all uniques. I would say right around that Jyn Erso Zeta is when I shifted from like necessary Zetas into being able to comfortably put on luxury Zetas without a lot of guilt. Obviously, there's been certain characters released since that point. Like afterward, you see Hux, Sith Trooper, Resistance Hero Finn, Mandalorian characters were released. Vader got reworked. So I think that number has shifted. The number of necessary Zetas has shifted, but also some Zetas have expired. So I'd say somewhere around 80 Zetas is how many necessary Zetas there are in the game. And then you kind of shift into this zone of luxury Zetas. It might be 85, but like 80 to 85 Zetas I think are pretty necessary. And then a number of these, then you can feel a lot less like you're missing out by not having those Zetas. Maybe it's... see, some of these are pretty good, but maybe that's more like 90. And that's not counting the Galactic Legend characters, which would have required Zetas. Before we go into my finalists for my 100th Zeta, the last thing I was kind of breaking down as I was thinking through this was how many Zetas I was putting on per quarter. Trying to figure out, okay, what was the rate of Zeta application that I was dealing with. So you can see here, like I couldn't narrow it down further. I didn't write down the date that I applied these Zetas, but I could roughly figure out based on the order that I put them on, when down to like a 3-month period, I could make a pretty safe assumption when these Zetas were put on. So this is my best guess of when I put on most of these Zetas. So you can see here, in 2017, it was basically 1 Zeta a month. And then that stayed kind of steady for the beginning of 2018. But then, primarily because when I was doing the Fleet store, I first tried to finish every farm in the Fleet store before I started farming Zetas. I'd say around August or September of 2018 is when I finished those farms. And then I started just using my fleet currency to purchase Zetas. And then you see then the rate of Zeta application started to increase to about shifting to about 1.7 per month to 2 Zetas per month and then up. And then CGs had also started releasing more ways in which to obtain Zetas, with Mother Telzine and Wicket being released, and Territory Wars giving Zetas. Those were available a little bit earlier, but it's in terms of my guild at the time, their ability to get Zetas was a little limited at first. And then by the beginning of 2019, Grand Arena had happened. The Falcon got released, and I kind of locked down a first place finish in the Fleet Arena. When the Falcon got released, I was ready to take advantage of that meta shift. So then that was just more Zetas that I was consistently obtaining on a monthly basis. So then by the middle of 2019, I was applying 3 Zetas a month. By the end of 2019, basically approaching 4, and now I'm consistently about 4 Zetas a month, and I've got 6 Zetas saved up. And then by 2020, that's Assault Battles started also awarding Zetas as well. So now there's even more Zetas that a player has access to and can put onto their roster. And now the finalists for the 100th Zeta. I'm going to narrow it down to 5 finalists. First up is Bastila Fallen. I never put this Zeta on during the Darth Revan meta. I was already finishing in the top 100 to top 50 fairly consistently. It wasn't going to be the difference to bring me to the top 20, so I was satisfied keeping that one off. But now, because of wanting a Galactic Legend counters, this Zeta now becomes a little bit more valuable to pair with Darth Vader and to be able to handle those Galactic Legend characters. Next up is another Sith character. This is a pure luxury Zeta, SWGOH. I like Sith characters in general. SWGOH was also, when I joined the game, right around the release of the Rogue One characters in the Rogue One movie. This is when the SWGOH Zeta was amazing, and it's been kind of just burned into my brain of how good this Zeta is, even though its usefulness has been expired because buff immunity and health immunity are so much more prevalent within the game that it's easily countered now. But I still just remember Galactic Wars just being ruined for me by getting to the end and not having a way to deal with Savage. And it's a Zeta I've always wanted, but I've always held off of putting on because I know that its usefulness is not really there anymore. But we've got this new Grand Arena season with Feats, and I just want to have it now. And I'd like to just see what use I can get out of it. Next up, we have POW. I've been talking about Mon Mothma in a ton of videos. I don't care what stage of the game you are in, you should be working towards having your Mon Mothma team in Grand Arena. Get those Zetas on, especially if you're in the early game, if you were around for when Mon Mothma was released and you got the marquee event, got her in the marquee event. Get Mon Mothma going. POW is a big part of it. For Papada is one of the contenders for my 100th Zeta. The next contender is Admiral Piazz. I've already put on the Emperor's Trap. We're just looking at suborbital strike here. Get that cooldown. Make sure I can get fear onto everyone. It is a good Zeta, and he is a good character that will help with a lot of those Galactic Legend counters when paired up with Vader. The fifth and final contender for my 100th Zeta is Ahsoka Tano Fulcrum Whirlwind. She's just one of my favorite characters in Star Wars. I'd like to get her up to relics. She's close to Gear 12 as is. Those are all easy pieces, but just because she doesn't have an obvious place in the game, I've held off. But she's a character I'd like to finish off. Whirlwind is the final contender, but I do want to address one honorable mention that I'm not going to do until 3v3 is back, and that is Ezra Bridger. Very useful Jedi. Once I have my Jedi Knight Luke geared up, I'll probably be using him much more often, but Flourish is a good Zeta. He's a good relic as well, and I tend to use him in 3v3 a lot more. So when 3v3 is coming back, I'll probably look at putting this onto him, but for now, he's not quite edging in there for the ones I'm seriously considering for the 100th. Here are our contenders. There will be no drum roll. The winner is going to be Savage. I just want it. There's no good reason. I'm hoping it might help on the margins. I tend to throw him in with Treya and some Geos. Maybe, I don't really care. I've just wanted to put this one on forever. 100th ZETA is a good excuse. Brute, it is. Now, usually in these videos, we gear up some characters, but after doing the Jedi Knight Luke event, I have no gear. So we will be wrapping up this video here. Over the past month, we've had a ton of growth on this channel. I really want to thank everyone who has subscribed, everyone who has been viewing the content. If you haven't subscribed yet, I really encourage you to do so. It really helps me figure out which videos and content that you all like and would like to see more of. And it's very motivating for me to see that kind of response, to kind of keep putting these videos out. And like right now, staying up late to do so. So this has been Still Plays. Be safe out there, everyone. And as always, be excellent to each other.